We were at risk of losing our little service station, which was just a fuel station. It was right opposite here in the main street. And of course, environmentally and almost every other reason, it was a very bad spot for it. But the people who had run it at a loss.
What's next? Is it the butcher shop? Is it the bakery? Is it the store? We're going to have to drive to Wodonga to buy a litre of milk when you run out at 9 o'clock at night, you know. All those sorts of thoughts were pretty awful, I think, to the people who were closely involved in the early days.
You can't not have petrol, it's as simple as that. Everything relies on fuel. I mean, it's sort of crazy thing, but there's that much more riding on it. You know, there's the little old ladies around town that never go into Albury Wodonga. What do they want to drive, you know, 70-kilometre round trip to get fuel? The professionals that we've sort of got into the town as part of our capacity building over the years and encouraged them to actually have offices in the town and not go and sit in a cubby hole that could be anywhere. You know, all of a sudden all those sort of things change if you, you know, either that or everybody's got jerry cans of petrol in their garages at home, and I mean that's no better either. You know?
I don't think it would have been catastrophic, but it would have been a step in the wrong direction. We've made a lot of improvements to our business since we've been here, and we feel pretty comfortable with where we are. But it certainly would have curtailed our growth, I'm sure.
First instance, we did actually take over the old service station site, and the reason we did that is because continuity was everything. I mean, it did have a small customer base, and we needed to send I suppose a psychological message out to the township that fuel's still available in Yak and we're going to keep it going.
Perhaps as a community group we might have done it quite differently and fallen on our faces, but because they did know what they were doing, they were business people, and so they set up a system whereby we as a community could become supporters as shareholders.
It's a really interesting thing to have a business in town that everybody owns, where it's not a cooperative and it's not volunteer labour and that sort of thing, but you know, all these people I think are fuel tycoons underneath, and I think it's a really interesting effect when they come onto the forecourt, because I know the staff understand that if something's wrong there's a fair chance the person filling the tank's going to let them know.
We've got something like 700 odd shareholders in a town of about 1,000 people who actually see themselves as an owner of that petrol station, and that means that they've got an incentive to use it. They get invited to an AGM every year. They've got share certificates which we sent out, and they can frame them, and a lot of the people in that shareholding group wouldn't be, I suppose, you wouldn't describe them as necessarily people who have had experience in owning shares before, but now they've owned shares, they understand what that means, and at the end of each year they get a little, albeit a little one, a dividend check, and it sort of says this is your share in the profits of the petrol station.
It was taken up with great enthusiasm. I mean, the fact that so many people became shareholders and had faith in what would happen, the fact that we were all prepared to take a risk, I think was good, because I don't know that anybody went into it thinking that any of us would ever get a dividend.
But I'm sure a lot of people didn't buy shares from a financial point of view, and the reason we were selling shares was to get their commitment to using the facility. That was part of the wider strategy in terms of ensuring its viability into the future. Right from the outset there was an awareness that we're not doing this, there's no pot of gold here, we haven't got a commercial goal out of doing this, there has to be another reason, and the other reason was to keep the service in the town.
I really think most people thought, oh, okay, we're going to put money into this and we're going to still have a servo and everything will be okay, and they really didn't care if money came back or not. It seemed like a nice concept. So for people to actually get a dividend and put some money, as we did in the kindergarten and hospital and different bits and pieces, I think they were very surprised and very happy. As
well as the financial return, under our constitution, 50% of every dollar profit that we distribute has to be returned to a community project or cause of some description.
There was a lot of people who either wanted money in the community or they wanted a dividend, and by splitting it down the middle, putting half the profits back to the shareholders and half into the community fund, I think we picked up just about everybody. There's a few people on either wing who didn't come and play, and they were upfront about it. There was a few people who came and said, look, I'd be involved except the money's going to a community fund and I don't trust that concept. And there was other people who said exactly the opposite. You know, they said, oh, I don't want shareholder involvement, I just want the money to fix my town.
It's a rich town, it's a growing town. We just thought you just can't have a town that doesn't have fuel. And we've got an historic streetscape here which has got a huge amount of commercial space compared to the population that's here, and that's a fall back to the days of the gold rush when it was a local service centre, but all that sort of thing's changed with the advent of two-car families and dormitory suburbs and internet and all those sorts of things.
The talk at the time was saying, a public share offer that raised $400,000. I mean, if you go down Collins Street, that's the sort of money that's sitting in the petty cash tin. So it's nothing in those sort of corporate dollar terms. But when you extrapolate the scope of that out to comparing it to the population of the township, I remember doing an equation at the time, and if you had a similar level of participation with a similar process in Melbourne, you would have raised enough money to build the entire city link.
I don't think I could overstate it. I think it's very, very important for places like this. Yakandan is a little bit different in that we're commuting distance from a good-sized centre, and a lot of people have the choice of buying all their goods in Albury-Wodonga. And so we've got and there's a fair few who do. So we have to, as well as provide the service for those people, we have to train them out of their habits. And if the fuel had gone into Albury-Wodonga, that would have been just one more nail in the coffin.
Something that often characterises these sorts of crises is that people jump up and down and say, march in the street and say, the council should do something about it. And I think most of the group who we were doing the thinking with thought that we were realistic enough to know that it doesn't matter how much stomping of our feet we do, it's pretty much beyond the council's capacity to go out and buy a loss-making business.
I think we did a little panic when we discovered we were losing $400 a week at the original site. But no, I think we always believed that, well, I don't think failure was going to be an option. We were just determined that we were going to have fuel one way or the other.
It was important to be able to communicate to people the importance of it, and also be able to keep on their cases, if you like. As much as you don't like to play the salesman, it's an unfortunate reality that people don't just come and jump on board your train. You've got to hang out the door and wave. So
all these small towns have got dozens of community organisations that, and that's what makes them tick, and that's what gives them their sense of community and the inclusiveness that you feel when you live in a small town like this. It's a special thing, I think.
Myself, I have had confirmed that our future's in really good hands, and that's just an excellent thing for my generation to have confirmed again and again and again.